Hey everyone, and welcome back to our video tutorial. We're going to pick up right where we left off and start off by creating a new layer at your layers palette and just calling it something like shape 1. From here we're going to switch over to our pen tool and we will begin to create our first shape. What we want to do is gradually build up our composition, and we have quite a bit of room to work, so don't be afraid to be bold with your choices here. Be big with your shapes. And just basically, like I started to show you in the previous lesson, use some of these anchor points to go for a smoother looking shape. The easiest way to do that, like I was describing before, for those of you who didn't see that part, is hold down the Alt Option key and then just basically click on this, and it will allow you to control each of these anchors here. Okay, so just go ahead and continue to create your first shape. Something kind of organic and blob-like, for lack of a better way of describing it. Close your shape, and then hold down the Control key and click on the path, and choose Make Selection. And for now, we're going to leave the feather radius set to 0 pixels. Go ahead and hit OK, and then go down to your color picker and choose, let's see, a nice vibrant color here. We want to choose something like maybe around here. Alright, and then go ahead and hit Alt Option plus the Delete key to fill that layer with your color. Now as you can see down here, this area maybe requires a little more attention as far as the shape goes. It looks a little wonky. So I'm going to click here and somewhere down here. It's actually kind of hard to see because of the color I used, but we just want to smooth that shape out. I'm going to select that area, make another shape, make selection, and just remove that from there. Alright, and then you can kind of get right in there and smooth out that edge that was created. And this is basically just a way to get you more familiar and comfortable with using the pen tool. It's a great way to just practice making some selections, especially because we're going to be creating quite a few of these shapes. So that looks a little better. The tip is still a little bit weird, but we can correct that pretty easily. You don't have to be too precious about this either. I just want to get rid of that hard edge down there on the bottom. There you go. All right, so I can zoom out. What I'm going to do next is create another new layer on top of shape 1. And this is kind of cool because there's a few ways you can go about this, and I'll show you my favorite way of doing it. Switch over to your brush tool and make sure you have a round soft brush set to around 20% opacity, like so. And you'll notice that as I begin to paint, I'm just putting paint on the canvas, which I don't want to see it here in the background really. So a nice way to fix this is by selecting your new layer and actually going between the two layers and then holding down your Alt Option key. And what that's going to do is add a clipping mask to your image. A clipping mask is actually really cool because now you can see it only affects what is inside of this shape 1 layer. So I'm going to go back to my new layer and continue to just paint with my low opacity brush to kind of figure out where I want the highlights to be on this shape. And actually, you can also experiment with the blending modes here. So I'm going to quickly change mine to overlay, and that gives it more of a yellowish kind of highlight rather than just hard white. Looks a little more natural and adds some nice value to our first shape. So something like that I think is kind of cool. I'm just going to call this pass 1 for now. It'll be basically our first pass at adding some highlights to the shape. And if you're not happy with that at any point, you can come down here, and add a layer mask to your highlights. And what you do from there, you switch to a solid black, and you can paint out some of the highlights if you want to pull back on it a little bit. And it's nice because it's a non-destructive, obviously, so you can always bring it back by painting white into here if you feel that maybe you've made an accident or a mistake, and but that never happens. So Alright, so what we're going to do next is add another new layer. and we're going to basically create a new shape on top of that one. We just want to overlap the shape a little bit. It doesn't have to completely cover it, but we still want it to be organic and have kind of a rounded, smooth feel to it. All right, I'm going to zoom in here. Close the shape, and you can see I'm just manipulating the anchor points again. But it's pretty blobular, if that's a word. I'm going to do the same thing. Hold down the Control key and click on the path. And then once the menu appears, I'm going to hit Make Selection. Once again, leave the radius at 0. And hit X to switch between your foreground and background colors. And make sure that you have the orange color. And then go ahead and hit Alt Option plus Delete to once again fill that layer with a solid orange. This shape will be called Shape 2. And we're going to do the same thing. So this time, create another new layer above Shape 2. Hold down your Alt Option key and add another clipping mask. This layer we're going to go ahead and call Pass 2. Just follow the same naming convention that we used already. And we're going to go ahead and change the blending mode to overlay. Switch back, once again hitting the X key, switch back to your white foreground color, and then paint in some highlights on this shape. Okay, we want it to kind of follow the same direction, and we know we're going to have something around the middle of the image here. So we kind of want the light emanating from the middle of the image. All right, so something like that I think is looking pretty cool. What you can do, again, you'll see in what we did before was add a layer mask to our highlight layer. You can also do this to the actual shape itself if you want to remove some of it from your image. And you'll see what happens here. If you paint in with a solid black on your layer mask, it will sort of remove our original shape that we created. But the effect actually looks a little bit more like a shadow. So it's always nice when you have these kind of things that give the illusion of something else. And it actually starts to add quite a bit of depth to our image already, pretty early on. So what I'm going to do is just switch back to white and begin to paint in some of our original image. We don't want the shadow to be too strong as of yet. I like to, kind of gradually build this up as I go. Which is the nice thing about layer masks, is you can always, bring it back. Again, it's non-destructive. All right, so you can see that actually looks pretty cool. What you can do next is, if you want to add a layer mask to your second shape and paint with some black here, it'll actually reveal some of the edges of the shape below it. And this is a way to really help blend these shapes together once we start to add more of them. But you can see here, just on these 4 layers, we've started to build up a pretty basic foundation for our larger composition. So ideally, as we continue to work, we're going to be filling up more of the canvas with these organic shapes that we've begun to create here. But before we do that, I want to show you guys something that I like to do when I work to help keep things neat and organized and just keep track of your layers. So you'll notice over here what I've done is just, select my top layer and hold down the Shift key and select the layer below. And from here, you can press Command plus G on your keyboard to put both of these layers into a group folder, which I'm just going to name Shape 2. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the same for Shape 1, and this is just a way to help keep things organized. All right, so what we're going to do next is unlock our background layer and press the Command plus the right bracket key to move this layer above the black background layer. So it's another nice little shortcut just for moving your layers up and down in your layers palette, is using the Command key plus left to go down, or Command and the right bracket key to go up. Okay, so for now we want the white background layer on top of the black one. We're going to add a layer mask to this layer and then press G on the keyboard to switch over to our gradient tool. Once we've done that, we want to make sure that we have a radial gradient selected that fades from white to black. All right, I'm going to click somewhere in the middle of the canvas and hold down the Shift key and just drag outwards. And what this is going to do is just create this nice radial gradient here that leaves us with some vignetted edges around the corners. All right, so go ahead and reduce the opacity to about 15 to 20%. And what this is going to do is basically serve as a backlight, so that once we introduce the electronic device into our image here, it'll help to just add that much more depth and dimension to the piece. So I think that about wraps it up for now. But what we're going to do in our next lesson is continue to build up this design and add some more of these shapes. Then we will begin to experiment with some lighting effects and just take it from there. So I hope to see you guys soon.